I have a serious love affair with the alphabet. I just have loved them since I was little. When I was a teenager, I had a little business where I would cut letters out of felt and make little banners that you could hang in your room with sayings on them. And I've collected alphabets. I even made a book about an alphabet where I went to the state fair and photographed all the letters I could find and put them into pages that tell the story of being at the fair through the alphabet. I even helped make a place where you could come to at the Minnesota State Fair where you could play games with the letters of the alphabet called the Alphabet Forest. What I find so miraculous is that you could take this little bowl of 26 letters and you could rearrange them and make every single book in my library. You could rearrange them continuously until you made every book in every school library, every city's library. It's a miracle that these 26 letters can do all of this for us. If you came to visit my studio, I would show you my collection, which starts with the alphabet I have over my door. But here are two of my favorites, these little short stubby letters, little plumps sit on the ground, and these tall skinny ones. So this month I thought we would take the alphabet and learn how to cut letters out of paper. Let's make a card for someone we love, and to do that we need to choose two colors that we really like out of construction paper and fold both of them matching your corners and use your fingernail to get a nice crisp fold. Now decide which one would you like to be the front and which one would you like to be the inside. I'm going to make the yellow my front. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut right up that fold line so I have two pieces. And the green is going to be my inside. Now I want a little green to show on the front, so I'm going to trim off a little bit of yellow from all four sides. I'll turn it, trim another, turn it, and now I have this little tiny edge. Now I have to decide, do I want this to be a horizontal card or a vertical card? And that will be determined largely by what word I decide I want to cut. And I made you a sheet of different numbers of letters and some very big words, Lollapalooza being one of my favorites. But choose one of these. For today, I'm going to choose hug, H-U-G. And I'm going to use this as my model, these tall, thin letters that I showed you, H-U-G. The first thing I'm going to do is cut a strip that is exactly the size of the letters I want to make. So I'm going to do two versions. I'm going to do a short version and that tall, thin version, just in case the tall, thin version doesn't work out. So I'm cutting two strips. And now I'm going to cut a rectangle for each of the letters. This is going to be the H letter. And this is going to be the U rectangle. And now I need a G rectangle. So those are the spaces that my three letters will occupy. I'm going to do the same thing with the smaller, more plump letters that I want to make sure that I have an option that works. Now I have the rectangles that I need for H, U, G in two sizes. Let's look at a sheet that I made for you that kind of gives you the shapes of the letters and what you might need to cut out. The H and the U are fairly simple letters. So let's start with those, but I'm going to make them extra tall. The H, I'm going to make the H's belt kind of high. I think I'll always think of them as the H is sort of walking along. But I'll use the outside of the rectangle as the outside of the letter. So give this a try. Notice how when I cut a letter, I'm turning the paper, not my scissors so much, but mostly the papers. Now for the U, I'm going to trim off the edges of the rectangle, and then I'm going to come down, see how I turn the paper there to make the turn at the bottom of the U. I want you to try that if you can. Now, next is a G. The G is a little more complicated, so let's have a look at it. You can see that it's C, like a C shape, but it has that little shelf on it. I always think of the G sort of having its chin on its fist there on that shelf. So let's start by making a C shape. I'm going to cut in where I'll start, and then I'm going to trim off the edges so I can use the outside of the rectangle as the shape of my G. I'm going to spin the paper, and I have two curves this time at the top and the bottom. Now we want to make that little shelf. So as I come up, I trim out the middle and cut across so that I have that little shelf all in one cut. I'm going to trim off the bottom of the rectangles so I have a nice curved bottom for that G. Now there are the three letters and they just fit, H-U-G. Now I'm going to try the same thing with the smaller letters, and I'm going to look at my little puzzle pieces to give me an idea, but you know what an H looks like, and we're going to use the sides. So it's a pretty easy cut. Again, I'm going to be turning the paper as I work. Now, U, remember, you're going to trim off the bottom and go straight down using the sides as the U. Now, trim off the curves at the bottom. There, exactly. Now it's time for the G, which is a little bit trickier letter. So I'm going to use the rectangle and trim off the corners, just as if we've done before. And I'm going to start cutting the circle. So let's look at it up close. I'm going to trim off those corners, and I'm going to start cutting the circle that will be the C. And this time I'm not going to cut that little shelf. I'm just going to make it more like a C with a high arch on one side. And I'm going to pick up a piece of scrap and cut that little shelf to add it when I glue it all together. And you won't even really see that I have made it in two parts, but it does make it easier to cut some letters. Should I make this card horizontal or vertical? And I'd like to add an S to hugs. And I'm going to show you up close. First, trim off the curves of our rectangle, and then I'm going to cut out a keyhole-like shape on one side and another keyhole-like shape on the other side. And then I'm going to trim up in between those two keyholes, and that gives me an S. A little simpler way to do it is simply to cut two U's and then start to trim it up so that the S comes to you as you see it. Now you can see one S has a little hook to it and one is straight. So I sort of like the hook, so I practice with that. Now, I'm going to make hugs to you, and to make that O, I could cut out the middle, or I could cut another piece and just lay it on top and have the center. But if I'm going to cut it out, I'm just going to break right into the center with a cut line and then cut it out, because when I glue it down, you won't be able to tell that there's a line there. So give that a try. Now, Y-O-U, hugs to you. I need 3 rectangles, 1 for each letter, and then I trim off the circle, the edges, and I can cut into it knowing that I can glue it down and you won't be able to see it. And you know how to make a U. And you trim off the inside and then curve up the bottom, so hugs to you. But, not sure I like that so much. So I'm going to pull off my letters and let's try a vertical version. Hug to you, and leave the S behind. I don't like how that T doesn't show up too well, so I'm going to cut a little square to go right underneath the 2 letters T-O. It's time to glue, and I always get a catalog or something that has paper from the recycling bin that I can use to get all the sticky part out of my way. I'm going to glue all the letters carefully, putting the 2 on top of the orange, and then I'll glue those whole shapes down. Hug to you. I'm going to add a little explanation point there at the end. And now I'm going to glue it onto the cover. And I'm going to press it with my hands, but I'm also going to put a sheet of white paper down and press hard. So now I'm going to make an inside. I'm going to take that other piece of the half of the cover, and I'm going to add a piece of white over it because sometimes I get nervous. And let's use that hugs on the inside. I want to send this to my brother, but oh no, it doesn't fit the envelope. So if you're going to use an envelope, I think it'd be a good idea to do that first.